Kyle Abbott had always believed he could control the chaos around him, but on this night, this horrifying, unforgettable, soul-splitting night, he discovered just how fragile that illusion really was, as he stood in the middle of the Abbott living room with his chest heaving and his vision blurring with fury, betrayal, and the razor-sharp sting of a truth he never wanted to face. Claire Grace, trembling yet defiant, stood across from him, one hand pressed to her cheek where the echo of his impulsive, anguished slap still burned like a brand, and little Harrison, their innocent center of gravity, their fragile heart in human form, stood near the bottom of the staircase with tears spilling down his rosy cheeks as he screamed, "Stop, Daddy. Please stop," in a voice raw enough to cut through Kyle's rage like shattered glass, as though his son's trembling plea had reached into the darkest part of him and ripped at the strings that held him together, forcing him to confront, all at once, the shattering consequence of a truth he had just uncovered, a truth that Claire had locked behind her spine-straight composure for weeks, maybe months, a truth she thought she could manage until Harrison himself, sweet, trusting, perceptive Harrison, stumbled onto the evidence that blew the lid off everything, a small, innocuous piece of digital proof, a tiny audio message saved on the toy tablet Kyle bought him last Christmas, a recording Harrison didn't understand but instinctively knew was important, a recording Claire never meant for anyone to hear, especially not Kyle, especially not the child she had come to love in her own complicated, secret-ridden way, a recording where Claire whispered into the phone late one night, "Yes, yes, I told him exactly what you said. Kyle trusts me. He won't question me. And Harrison won't even know what happened," followed by a pause and Claire's shaky breath and the faint voice of someone Kyle didn't recognize, someone who hissed back, "Good. Keep the pressure on him. We need the Abbotts vulnerable when the time comes." And when Kyle heard that recording, when he watched Harrison hold the tablet in his tiny hands and say, "Daddy, I found something. I didn't mean to, but, can you listen?" with that shy, earnest innocence that always melted Kyle's heart, the world shifted under his feet, the foundation cracked, and everything he thought he knew about Claire, her redemption arc, her healing, her devotion to their family, crumbled into ash around him, unleashing a rage so volcanic, so unhinged, that he stormed into the living room where Claire was organizing Harrison's school papers and without thought, without breath, without any measure of restraint, he slapped her, the sound a horrifying crack that echoed through every corner of the Abbott home, a sound that made Harrison scream and run forward with his hands outstretched, begging his father, his hero, to stop hurting the woman he'd come to trust. But the slap wasn't born out of hatred, not truly, not at its core, it was born out of heartbreak, of betrayal, of the same emotional wound Kyle suffered when Summer walked away, when Tara lied, when Diane returned from the dead and ripped the ground out from beneath him, and Claire, standing with tears in her eyes but refusing to crumble, whispered, "I can explain," though her voice quivered with the weight of 1,000 miles of secrets, and Kyle, shaking, voice-breaking, shouted back, "Explain? Explain what, Claire? That you were using me? Using my son? That you've been manipulating us for someone else's agenda? That everything between us was a lie?" And Claire, clutching her burning cheek, whispered, "No, Kyle. Not a lie. Not all of it. Please, please let me talk." But the moment Harrison's sobs grew louder, the moment he tugged at Kyle's arm and cried, "Daddy, don't hurt her. Please don't be mad. I don't want you to be mad anymore." Kyle's eyes filled with tears so sudden, so blinding, that his shoulders dropped and his breath hitched, because hearing that plea, hearing his son beg him to stop losing control, dragged him out of his fury and slammed him into a horrifying realization. Harrison had seen too much, heard too much, been exposed to too much adult pain, too much chaos that should have never touched a child's world. Guilt surged through Kyle like acid, and with trembling hands he crouched down to Harrison's level and whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry," but Harrison only sobbed harder and clung to him, terrified that the father he adored had turned into someone he didn't recognize, and as Kyle hugged him, the weight of his actions hit him like a tidal wave. He had struck Claire in front of Harrison, he had let rage take control, and now his son might never see him the same way again. Claire, still shaking, watched this, her heart twisting in a painful knot, because she knew she had caused this chain reaction, her secret, her connection to the mysterious voice on the recording, her desperate attempt to protect Kyle in a way that would never look like protection, had blown up in ways she never intended. With a trembling breath, she whispered, "Kyle. I never meant for Harrison to be involved. I never wanted him to be hurt. Please, just let me explain before you make up your mind." But Kyle, still kneeling and holding his son, looked up at her with eyes full of tears, tears of anger, of devastation, of paternal fear, and for the first time since he met her, since he saw the broken, fragile woman who wanted so badly to rebuild herself, he didn't see someone he wanted to help. He saw someone who had endangered the one person he'd sworn to protect above all else. As Harrison clung to him, Kyle stood slowly, his voice hoarse and shaking as he asked, "Who was on that recording, Claire? Who were you talking to? What were you planning? And why, did you think using my trust, using my son, was acceptable?" Claire closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks, and whispered, "I wasn't using him. I swear I wasn't. I was trying to keep him safe. I was trying to keep you safe. Kyle. I was working against them, not with them. You have to believe me. That call, you heard only part of it. You don't know what I was actually doing, what I was trying to prevent." But Kyle shook his head, the lump in his throat massive, the fear clawing at his chest unbearable. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust her, wanted to think the woman he let into his home and his son's life wasn't capable of this level of betrayal, but the pain was too fresh, the evidence too damning, the echo of Harrison's sobs too loud. He whispered, "If you're telling the truth, if any of this was for us, then you tell me everything. Right now. Every secret. Every lie. Every person involved. Because if you don't, if you hold back even one thing, you will never see this house again. You will never see Harrison again. Do you understand me?" Claire's breath hitched, and she nodded slowly, knowing she had reached the breaking point, the moment where every lie, every omission, every protective instinct twisted into a monster, had to be confronted, exposed, and either redeemed or destroyed. She took a shaky step forward, voice breathless as she whispered, "It started the night Jordan escaped," and as she began to speak, the full, horrifying truth trembling on her lips, Kyle held Harrison close, tears slipping onto his son's hair. Realizing that no matter what Claire said next, no matter how this nightmare ended, nothing would ever be the same again for any of them, because tonight, the mask had shattered, the secret had come out, the slap had changed everything, and when Harrison, the innocent little boy caught in the crossfire, looked up at Kyle with wet, terrified eyes and whispered, "Daddy, are we safe now?" Kyle felt his heart break in a way no betrayal, no lie, no past trauma had ever broken him before, and he whispered, voice cracking, "I'll make sure we are, buddy. I promise. I'll make sure no one ever hurts you again." Even as he stared at Claire, who stood broken but determined, desperate yet brave, terrified yet willing to finally tell the truth, and realized that for the first time in his life, he didn't know whether the greatest danger had come from outside their home, or from the person he had just slapped in front of his son. And as the night stretched on and Claire opened her mouth to confess the entire truth that could either save them all or burn the Abbott family to the ground, Kyle braced himself, because whatever happened next, whatever secrets were about to spill out, he knew one thing with absolute certainty: Harrison's evidence had already changed the course of all their lives forever, and the tears streaming down Kyle's face were only the beginning. Claire stared at Kyle with eyes full of terror, guilt, and a desperate kind of courage as she swallowed hard, her palms trembling as she wiped away the tears sliding down her bruised cheek, knowing that the next words out of her mouth had the power to either rebuild what little remained between them or obliterate it beyond repair. The living room felt impossibly small, air thick with tension, Harrison's soft sniffles still echoing as he clung to Kyle's shirt, soaking the fabric with his tears. And Kyle, still shaking, still pale from the emotional whiplash, tightened his hold around his son as if grounding himself, as if anchoring to the one truth he knew would never betray him, before he lifted his gaze back to Claire and whispered, voice cracking, "Start talking," and Claire nodded, her breath shuddering as she whispered, "It started the night Jordan escaped, the night I told you I didn't hear anything strange. I lied. Because someone contacted me. Someone who threatened to expose something I did years ago, something that happened before I ever came here, before I ever met any of you." Kyle's eyes narrowed, fury wanting to reignite, but Harrison whimpered softly and Kyle inhaled deeply, forcing himself to stay present, stay in control, because the last thing he wanted was to scare his son even more. Claire continued, twisting her fingers together as she paced slightly, unable to stand still under the weight of her confession. I got a text message. It said, "You owe us. And now you're going to pay it back. Do exactly as we say." I didn't understand at first who it was, not until the second message came. A voice memo. She paused, swallowing. The same voice you heard on Harrison's tablet. At that, Kyle stiffened, the memory of that distorted, sinister voice scraping down his spine like a dull knife. Who is it? He asked, his tone sharp but quiet. He didn't want Harrison hearing the rage lacing his voice. Claire's gaze flickered toward the floor. His name is Rowan. He worked for Jordan years ago. He was one of the people involved in the cult, the conditioning, the surveillance. You have to understand, Kyle, I escaped them physically, but I never fully escaped the people who carried out her orders. I thought they forgot about me. I thought they moved on. But Rowan, he didn't. Her voice cracked. He found me. And he threatened to tell CPS that I was dangerous, that I was unfit to be around any child, including Harrison. He knew that would destroy my life. And maybe I deserved it, Kyle. Maybe I did. But I couldn't, her breath hitched. I couldn't lose another chance. Not after everything. Not after you, and Harrison, gave me something I never thought I'd have again. Kyle looked torn, anguish flickering across his face. Part of him wanted to scream, the other part wanted to crumble, and yet another part wanted to reach out to her, if only because Harrison was watching, absorbing everything like a sponge. So you lied, Kyle whispered, voice wavering. You let someone manipulate you. You let him into our home, into our lives, without saying a damn word. Claire nodded, tears spilling as she whispered, yes. And I regret it more than anything I've ever done. But Kyle shook his head, disbelief twisting his expression. Regret doesn't fix what you did. Regret doesn't protect my son. Regret doesn't explain why you said on that recording that I trusted you and that you were keeping pressure on me. That sounded like a setup, Claire. That sounded like you were using us. Claire stepped forward, shaking. Because Rowan told me to say those things, she whispered urgently. He said he'd be recording me too. He said if I didn't sound convincing, if I didn't act like I was helping him, he'd expose everything. He forced me to play along. Kyle's eyes blazed. And you didn't think to come to me? To my mother? To my family? Claire, the Abbotts could have helped you. We fought off worse than some scumbag using blackmail. But Claire looked away, shame twisting her features. I was scared, she whispered. Not of Rowan. Of you. Scared you'd believe I was dangerous. Scared you'd pull Harrison away. Scared I'd lose everything I love. Harrison sniffed louder at those words, lifting his head from Kyle's chest to look at Claire, confused and hurting. Why would you lose us? He asked softly, his small voice barely above a whisper. Claire's breath caught. Because I made mistakes, sweetheart, she whispered gently. And I didn't tell the truth when I should have. I hurt your daddy's feelings. And I'm so sorry. Harrison looked between them, his lip trembling. Did you lie because you didn't love us anymore? He asked in that heartbreakingly innocent way only children could manage. Claire dropped to her knees, tears spilling freely. No. I lied because I loved you too much, she whispered. Because I didn't want to lose you. Either of you. Harrison blinked, confused, overwhelmed, clinging tighter to Kyle. And Kyle, aching, exhausted, closed his eyes, the pressure in his chest becoming suffocating. Claire, he whispered, voice breaking. Do you have any idea what tonight did to him? What your secrets did? Claire nodded rapidly. I know. And I'm so sorry. I will spend the rest of my life making up for it if you let me. Just, please listen to everything before you decide if you hate me. Kyle looked down at Harrison, at the fragile, trembling innocence clinging to him, then back at Claire, who looked like a woman on the edge of collapse. "Keep talking," he said, voice rough. Claire inhaled shakily. Rowan didn't just want information about the Abbotts, he wanted access. He wanted leverage. "He told me to watch you, to track your movements, to report anything unusual." Kyle's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. "So you were spying on me?" he whispered harshly. Claire shook her head violently. "No. I refused at first. I told him I wouldn't hurt you. And that's when he threatened Harrison directly." Kyle froze. The world seemed to tilt. "What?" he asked, voice dangerously quiet. Claire swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "He said that if I didn't do exactly what he said, he'd take care of the Abbott kid first." Those were his exact words. And Kyle, I believed him. I've seen what people like him can do. I panicked. I didn't think straight. I thought if I played along, if I acted like I was helping him, I could buy time while I figured out a way to stop him. Kyle's vision blurred with red. He hugged Harrison so tightly the little boy let out a small sound, and Kyle loosened his grip, whispering, "Sorry, buddy," before glaring at Claire again. "You let someone threaten my son," he whispered, voice trembling with pure paternal rage. "You let someone, anyone, speak harm over him. And you didn't tell me." Claire shook her head frantically. "Because I thought if you confronted him, he'd go after Harrison faster. I was trying to protect him, Kyle. I swear. I swear on everything. I thought I was doing the right thing." But Kyle's laugh was sharp and broken. "The right thing? Claire, the right thing would have been telling me the second he contacted you. Not letting this blow up in front of my son." Harrison whimpered again, burying his face into Kyle's neck, and Kyle softened for a second, soothing him with a gentle hand. "It's okay," he whispered. "Daddy's here. You're safe." But the words tasted like ash, because nothing felt safe. Not tonight. Not with what Claire had admitted. Not with the threat hovering over their heads like a guillotine. Claire watched them, her heart breaking at the sight of Harrison trembling in Kyle's arms. "I should have told you," she whispered. I know I destroyed your trust. But I didn't want him to take anything from you ever again. And Rowan, he's not working alone." Kyle stiffened again. "What do you mean?" Claire hesitated. "He's part of a group that wants to bring down powerful families who have influence, money, connections. The Abbotts are the perfect target. They want to expose you. Ruin you. Break you from the inside out. And using me, using my past, was the easiest way in." Kyle's heart thundered painfully. "So you were the weapon," he whispered bitterly. Claire's voice cracked. "I tried not to be. I fought it. Every day. Every single day. But I didn't know how to stop it without putting you and Harrison in danger." Kyle shook his head, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "You could have trusted me," he whispered. "You could have told me. We could have handled it together. But you made that choice for me. And now my son is terrified. He saw something he should have never seen. He heard things he shouldn't have heard." Tears streamed down Claire's face. "I know. And I will hate myself for it forever." For a long moment, there was only silence, thick, heavy, suffocating. Then Harrison quietly lifted his head again, his voice trembling. "Daddy?" Kyle looked down. "Yes, buddy? Are you mad because Claire lied?" Harrison asked softly. Kyle exhaled shakily. "I'm mad because she scared you," he admitted. "I'm mad because people tried to hurt us. And because she didn't tell me the truth." Harrison looked over at Claire, eyes big and glassy. "But, she's crying," he whispered. Claire broke. She covered her face with both hands as a sob tore out of her chest, loud and raw, the sound of a woman who had no more defenses left. And Harrison, sensitive and empathetic, felt his little heart twist. "Daddy," he whispered. I don't want Claire to cry. Kyle's throat closed. Because Harrison, despite everything, still cared for her. Still trusted her. Still loved her. That innocence, that purity, it shattered Kyle in ways he wasn't prepared for. Claire lowered her hands, tears clinging to her lashes. Harrison, sweetheart. I am so sorry. Harrison bit his lip, conflicted. Are we still a family? He asked quietly. The question punched through all three of them. Kyle felt the breath leave his lungs. Claire let out a soft cry. Harrison waited, tiny, hopeful, terrified. Kyle didn't answer right away. He couldn't. Because he didn't know. Finally, he whispered, voice breaking, I don't know yet, buddy. But I promise you this, we're going to keep you safe. No matter what. Claire nodded, wiping her cheeks, voice shaky. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll tell the police everything. I'll turn myself in if I have to. I'll do anything to protect you both. Kyle looked at her, eyes full of complicated heartbreak. You're going to tell me everything, he said quietly. Every threat. Every message. Every person involved. You're not deciding anything alone ever again. Claire nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. I'll tell you everything.